Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight is a regular meeting of the South Kingstown Planning Board. The date is Tuesday, December 14, 2021. The first item on the agenda is roll call. Susan Axelrod? Here. Joe Murphy? Here. Paul Jordan?
Here.
Josh Daly?
Here.
Peter DiStefano?
Here.
Robin Pothier?
Here.
And Maria Mack is here. Our next agenda item is the consent agenda. This includes October 13, 2021 work session minutes, October 26, 2021 regular session minutes revised, November 9, 2021 work session minutes, November 23, 2021 regular session minutes, and the report of the administrative officer. If there are any corrections or additions, please make that known. If not, would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda? We have a motion from Peter. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second from Susan. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Our next agenda item is a public informational meeting, major multi-household land development, conceptual master plan, Magnolia Lane. Jamie, can you give us some information on that?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. With regards to agenda item D, and to the members of the public, this will pertain to agenda items D, 1, 2, and 3. But specifically to agenda item D, subdivision and land development projects, item number 1, public informational meeting for major multi-household land development, conceptual master plan for Magnolia Lane. The applicant has forwarded his humble apologies. Originally, this meeting was scheduled on the 28th of the month, but due to the holidays, the two meetings were consolidated to the 14th, and he is unfortunately out of town for this meeting. So he has requested that the hearing be continued to your January 25th meeting.
And Jamie, where are we in terms of time frame for that? Was there an extension that went along?
We are all set with timeframes.
Very good. Would someone like to make a motion to continue this item to our January 25th, 2022 meeting? We have a motion from Josh. Do we have a second? Second from Peter. It's a contest tonight. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Next agenda item, public hearing, change to an approved plan, major subdivision, flexible design residential project, South County Trail subdivision.
Madam Chair, again, agenda item D2 regarding the public hearing for South County Trail subdivision. As we were doing our due diligence as staff and reviewing the application, we were aware that there was an administrative defect with the public notice. So in correspondence to you and our staff report is our recommendation to continue the hearing on this until January 25th to allow the applicant to correct that defect. It's primarily associated with the public notice sign that needs to be on the property. I know there are a number of people here in the audience with regards to South County Trail because they received a letter in the mail regarding this agenda item. But again, given the defect with public notice, it's our recommendation, which was done in consultation with council, to table this hearing until the 25th of January.
Thank you, Jamie. And just to clarify, the public notice that you're referring to is the large orange signs that folks may have seen around town from time to time that specifically demonstrate that that's a particular parcel is under review and is up for a public hearing.
Madam Chair, with regards to this agenda item, if any members of the public came here and had very specific questions, I am available within the planning department. Jay Parker, who is our principal planner, or Brian Wagner, who is our senior planner. Please contact our office or stop by the town hall, and we can potentially answer any questions associated with the notice that you received and the reason for the notice and what the applicant is proposing to change.
And also with the understanding that this item is likely to be continued to our January meeting. Would someone like to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion, but before I do, Jamie, is there anything here that would be valuable for the members to do a site visit, or is there really nothing to be gained from that?
No, we've asked the applicant to submit clarifying maps so that you can clearly see what the existing approved condition was with regards to the no-cut buffer and what transpired on the site and what they are proposing to do. In essence, map 1, map 2, with the distinct overlay for map 3.
We'll have those for the January 25th meeting.
We have requested that information over a month ago.
So I'll make that motion to continue this topic to the January 25th.
Second.
We have a motion from Joe, we have a second from Paul, and I would add to Joe's point that lack of a site visit doesn't prevent individual board members from going out to the site and having a look around, which is always the case. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next, item D3, public hearing, major multi-household land development project, preliminary plan, the residences on Holly. Jamie.
Again, Madam Chair, this was scheduled for a public hearing under the major household land development for the residents at Holly. We were awaiting some additional information from the applicant. He has requested that this be tabled to your January 25th meeting. And again, just for some explanation, because the planning board members may say we have 3 agenda items on here that were subject of a public hearing. We have a normal requirement for public hearing notice in the newspaper. When our submissions were due is typically 2 to 3 weeks before our regularly scheduled meeting. As we were preparing to do those notices, we got an email from the newspaper. And because of Thanksgiving and due to staffing issues at the newspaper, they moved their deadlines up almost 7 days. So we, specifically me, as your administrative officer and the director of the department, had to make a very quick decision. And that decision was to advertise the hearings so that the applicants would not be potentially held back a month if they submitted the subsequent information within that week. So we lost a week on our normal public notice submissions. So again, we were very conservative and cautious, gave the applicants the benefit of the doubt that within those 7 days they would supplement their file and get their notices in order. Wasn't standard practice, but because of that unique holiday with staffing issues at the paper, that we made the call to advertise in essence a week early, which put us in this predicament. It was somewhat unavoidable, so my humble apologies for anyone who had to come tonight, and especially planning board members who were also looking at agenda seeing 3 items that just got tabled. So,
And Jamie, with this particular request for and the January continuation to January meeting, is there an extension that goes along with that in terms of time?
I'm not aware of the need for the extension at this time.
That's something we would probably want to know
Yes.
as we go into that meeting.
It's possible if action isn't taken by the next month, we'll need an additional section. So, again, the next regularly scheduled meeting of the planning board is January 25th.
I'll make the motion, but I guess one thought, Jamie, is that even if it doesn't appear that we need the extension, I think it's a good practice for us to ask for the extension whenever we grant it to the applicant, if the applicant wants to do it. So we don't get into the situation where we want to continue it on, but the applicant sees that we have to get it done. So anyways, with that said, I think it's a good practice, but I'll make that motion to extend this to January 25th.
Thank you, Joe. I agree with your sentiment. Is there a second? Second from Peter. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Sorry, folks, and thank you for coming out. Please do reach out to staff if you have questions. Obviously, we cannot act on any of these applications without an applicant and without the required information from the applicants. Next agenda item, Rhode Island Commerce Grant Application, Site Readiness Support Letter. Jamie.
Madam Chair, the board members have a copy of the grant application, and if you bear with me, I'll bring it up on our screen, and I will walk you through that.
Yes, go ahead. Could you come up, but if you're going to ask us, just come up to the mic and state your name for the record, just so it's all on the record, please.
Thank you. Jim Vasquez, 63 Oak Street, Wakefield. Are you going to take any public comments tonight, other than me asking this question?
Since we've continued it, and our attorney is vigorously shaking his head no, it appears that it would be unwise to do so, but please be in touch with staff if need be and come to our January meeting, which looks like it may be rather full, but we'll be talking about that a little later on tonight.
Okay.
So thank you for coming out.
All right. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Donegan, resident of 29 Michaela Court, South Kingstown. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association that encompasses Michaela Court, the South County Trail Homeowners Association, part of that subdivision. Again, I'd like to make public comment that we are extremely disappointed that we aren't able to have our issue addressed tonight.
If he's testifying on behalf of anything associated with the subdivision, your application before you is not lot, although it's lot specific, it is an amendment to a previously approved subdivision.
So can I make a comment as a
Yeah.
as a citizen?
Hang on one second.
wait.
Let's hear from Andy.
Sure.
I think we've heard your comment about how disappointed you are that you're here and you can't speak. That's all we can hear. Nothing at all about the substance.
But please do not, again, hesitate. Get in touch with staff. You can send a letter and come to the hearing. And by the way, this rarely happens. 3 items like this, this never happens to us. So this is a very unusual situation, but please be in touch.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, with regards to the agenda item regarding site readiness, Rhode Island Commerce, who functions as the economic arm of the state of Rhode Island for certain aspects associated with economic development, had a grant program that became available, again called the Rhode Island Site Readiness Grant Program. And that program had a deadline of December 7th for submissions. The grant program is associated with the development of funds for municipalities who are looking to make land shovel-ready, or under a category, look at regulations and or their comprehensive plan in a manner to efficiently, proactively make economic development viable within the community on the community's terms. So within the grant proposal application, there were kind of two buckets. One that basically was construction, site development, which was very specific to parcels that are ready and ripe for development. You know, you could seek money to tear down we'll call it a dilapidated home or commercial building to make the site readily more developable for the next use. Or again, you could develop regulations to make something occur. Under that nomenclature associated with regulatory land development, we submitted an application in concert with the town manager's office for $125,000 so that the municipality may have an opportunity to undertake a regulatory review of their zoning regulations as it relates to commercial development within Peacedale, Wakefield, and Tower Hill Road. We have talked about this. It's in our capital improvement program, our 5-year program. We initially had $75,000 in funding for this fiscal year. That has been slightly cut due to fiscal constraints. There was another $125,000 the following year, and then I think you get $85,000 or $75,000 in a subsequent year for over $200,000. When this opportunity became available, we almost jumped at it because we were excited due to existing fiscal constraints that money may become available at the state level, which would allow us to move that program forward. So with that, we submitted the application. Within the application, we looked, whenever you submit a grant, you're always like, who can we get to write support letters? So we're like, well, EDC, property owners within the districts, we're looking to revamp the regulations, homeowners, the list went on. And then we read the fine print, and it said only 3 letters of recommendation or support. So the decision was made to request that town council submit a letter of support for the grant, that the town's economic development committee submit a letter of support, and that the town's planning board submit a letter of support to constitute our 3. Just a quick note, the area that we're looking at is in excess of 300 properties, and based on our calculations using our geographic information system that's linked to our assessors database, the assessed value is a little north of $250 million. So again, if we can affect a regulatory change that can, the goal isn't to expedite development, but is to direct development in a manner that South Kingstown finds appropriate. And in doing so, try and give some certainty to the development process. The grant doesn't necessarily require regulatory changes. It lays the groundwork for suggestions for regulatory changes. So again, you're not tying your hands that if you accept the grant, if we're awarded it, that you have to change your regulations. It is a study to shepherd potentially changes to the regulations to bring some certainty. We always talk about gray areas and the uncertainty of an applicant, and then some gray areas when the planning board's reviewing that application. Try and eliminate some of those shades of gray, put them in a little more black and white. Discussion at EDC and historic nature, and recently is again mixed use within the corridor, as well as developing some design standards, again giving some certainty to anyone who's going within the development realm. So again, I know the planning board has received a hard copy of this. I can walk you briefly through it if that would help, or I can answer any specific questions or subject matter you may have.
Jamie, where would the $25,000 be coming from? Which pot of money, as far as the town is concerned?
So, again, the grant's for $125,000. When I was advised that we will be fiscally constrained on the capital side, the finance department was able to look at some budgetary savings in this fiscal year and move money into the planning department's consulting services, which we had $30,000 in this fiscal year, and they were able to add to that line item. So again, those funds, we made the decision to make them available if we were selected for the grant, and also make us more attractive as a grant applicant to have a little bit of the town's money in the game and not just utilizing state funds. So the total, if we were awarded, that would be available to bring on a consultant to work with the planning board would be $150,000, and that would be coming out of the planning department. The 25 of the 150.
Comments?
What's the expected outcome or deliverable from the consultant?
A lot of it would be driven by a workshop charrette program. Some of the members may be familiar. You did that with the URI students, but bringing in a very unique skill set of consultants who can articulate a vision that's being discussed by planning board members and the public. From that vision that you're trying to articulate, similar to our photo visionings we've been going through, establish a view and look you want for the corridor, along with the uses you feel are appropriate, and then back into the regulatory aspects of that. I like building A, B, and C. I like it whether it's a bank, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, whether it's office, whether it's retail. I like the look, the appearance, the aesthetics, the way it sits on the property. How do I write regulations to make that happen? And then also look at the permitting process associated with that. It could be a new code, kind of take the existing regulations for commercial highway on Tower Hill and throw those away for the moment, replace them with the new regulations that articulates the regulatory aspects to get a desired outcome.
What is this for the land use? Is primary commercial in nature or mixed use in nature?
That is, it can be mixed use, it can be standalone properties. Not every property within the district is attributable to a mixed use, and that's where the consultant would work very diligently with the planning board and the constituents within the community to try and create a vision. And there are a couple firms, and there's nomenclature in the zoning world that you have transects. So one area may be prime and ripe for mixed-use development, first floor office retail with residential, or something above second and third floor. But as you go to the shoulders of the district, that density may not be as welcome as the center or core part of that district. So if you look at the intersection of Kingstown Road and Tower Hill Road, you may have a more dense populated mixed use, but as you head towards Route 1, you go from taller to shorter. And the same thing, you may go taller to shorter as you come into Main Street, and then go shorter to taller as you get closer to Main Street. But all of that needs to be articulated in visioning, scoping, and charrette type scenarios.
So the letter from the planning board, when is that? I assume it would be drafted by staff on the planning board's behalf, and it's something that we would see.
So the recommendation, short order, we're looking for a motion to authorize the chairperson to sign a letter on the commission's behalf supporting the grant application. And Joe, just to follow up on that, ultimately there would be, one of the work products would be a regulatory example from written language of how to approach this. And again, you could do it with a form-based code, you could do it with an overlay district, you could do it with just a rewrite of your standards within the commercial zone and with your commercial downtown. There's a lot of tools in the toolbox. It's what the best one that fits for South Kingston, and it could end up being a hybrid, of the two. It could be a slight redo of your existing regulations with an overlay. It could be a certain portion of the district has a form-based code associated with it and a special district, and the rest of it is more conventional zoning. I probably have a path I'm leaning towards, but I'm entering this with a very open mind. I don't have all the answers, and that's the purpose of the study.
How do you see it related to the recent Horsley Witten stuff that was done around? So I remembered some of the discussion around that was similarly to start talking about what could you do in terms of zoning ordinances, what could you do in terms of, the sort of legal language. How does it build on that? How does it relate to that?
I think what it does build on that, Josh, because Horsley Witten was looking at primarily at the housing component. And if we look at, there's 4 to 5 phases of that, being your cottage and being your duplex. Now we're into mansion homes, triplex, and village apartments. The next component there is mixed use. This would be an expansion of the mixed use discussion, and then from the regulatory aspect. I don't think the Horsley Witten study can completely contemplate the entire Tower Hill Road section and how that plays out. Again, you could view it as an expansion of that kind of philosophical mindset of approaching development in the community. Right. But I think there's we got 3 distinct areas in the Peacedale, Wakefield, and then Tower Hill. I don't think there's any vision to make Tower Hill look like Main Street, Wakefield, or Peacedale. But I think there are certainly aspects that could be improved upon as development gets modified along Tower Hill and the downtowns.
We would certainly like to see many of the attributes from those areas into this kind of a plan.
Right.
Question on there's no page numbers, but under project impact, which is just above exhibit 1.4 on the bottom of the page, there is a reference to providing more housing opportunities and choices, including affordable housing opportunities. Although this is mixed use, it would be, I think, helpful in the letter from the board that we emphasize the affordable housing opportunities that may be provided by a well thought out plan and set of regulations. And additionally, since this is an outgrowth of the project with URI Senior Landscape Architecture design class, I think it would be important to reference that with an explanation of the time and effort and research that was done in that project, which included both undergraduate and graduate students. I just think that kind of background information will help to make this application that much better, because obviously it's competitive in nature. Any other thoughts or comments on this?
This is a tiny thing, but Part 3, project budget, second to last page, additional town funds, the total there says 125, but I think it should say 25.
Say that again?
No,
So when you look at that,
I have it.
yeah, so it's additional town funds on the project budget,
Yep.
and then you see,
Oh, right.
the price says 25, but under total it says 125.
A little bump up in the town's country.
Yeah, right.
My contribution.
Personal check.
Anything else?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
On the front, it says I'm sorry, maybe I wasn't listening. The first round of applications is December 7th. Is there another deadline that we're aiming for?
December 7th was our submission date that we were given by Rhode Island Commerce.
Okay. So we have the letters we can apply.
The letter will be, in our submission, we made them aware that we will be submitting 3 letters of support.
Okay.
EDC, Planning Board, and Town Council.
So we have $25,000 earmarked. I assume that if we didn't get this grant, we could still use that $25,000, or is there another plan if this grant didn't come through for us?
We have funds available to us. Decisions will be made in early spring on whether we start the process of the design guidelines. Again, tackling the zoning regulations as it relates to Wakefield, Peacedale, and Tower Hill is potentially beyond the scope of the financial resources that I have available in this fiscal year and next fiscal year. You know, again, we were anticipating that this fiscal year we would have $75,000 available on July 1st. I had $30,000 in consulting services in this year, so if we started a project in May, the department would have had 30, and then on July 1, access to 75, so that'd be 105, and then subsequent to that, we would have additional funds, so I could have, it would have been an 18-month or so program, but spread over, in essence, 3 fiscal years. I don't have certainty on that fiscal commitment now.
I have a question. I forget the name of the commission, but I know that there is a statewide commission looking at zoning, development, regulations, that sort of thing. Is it
Land Use Commission.
Land Use Commission? Is it? I mean, we're expecting some recommendations and possibly legislation to come out of that. Could that potentially conflict with what you come up with here, or would those? Do you think they would be?
That's going to be a while.
It's going to be a while. Okay.
Yeah, and again, and Andy can correct me, but how far a municipality can go on the design standard / architectural standards is a subject of a much broader discussion on the legal side, given Rhode Island's enabling legislation.
Susan, do you have another question? Nope. Anyone else?
I can make that motion.
Joe is going to make the motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that staff prepare a favorable letter endorsing the grant application with the signature and approval by the chairperson, and then the rest the rest of us receive copies after the fact for informational purposes only.
Is there a second from Josh? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, next agenda item, Saugatucket River, meeting with Town Council and the Economic Development Committee, and actually the Recreation Commission is also, I believe, going to be part of this meeting.
Yes, so Madam Chair, we were aware of discussions between the Economic Development Commission, Recreation Commission, and the Town Council about scheduling a joint meeting. There was also some side discussions about the Planning Board's role in that. So prior to the Town Council meeting, staff thought it would be important to put this agenda item on so that the Planning Board could bring the subject matter up and potentially write a letter to the Town Council to ask that if there was a joint meeting to be held regarding the Saugatucket that included EDC, the Rec Department, and Town Council, that perhaps the Planning Board would like to be invited to that. Last night at the Town Council meeting, they voted to schedule a meeting on the Saugatucket subject matter with EDC, with the Rec Commission, the Planning Board, and the Town Council. And that has been scheduled for January 22nd. It is a Monday at 6 p.m. So everybody will get an invitation to that, and we will have to notice that as a special meeting of the Planning Board.
22nd? Yeah, 22nd, sorry, 24th?
Sorry? Is it the 24th?
Before the council meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, so that'd be
Sorry.
Monday, the 24th.
So I stand corrected.
And It's likely, if it's going to be, you said before their meeting, so it will probably be an earlier time.
6 p.m.
Probably, yes.
6 p.m. So 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. would be the work session with those 3 boards and commissions. 7 o'clock would be the council's work session on their agenda, and 7:30 would be the regularly scheduled meeting. And I do, Maria, have the slides. So again, just quickly, the Saugatucket Park, as it presently exists, a lot of discussion and work went into its existing conditions and a historic plan for it, which is by the Olmsted firm. This is actually a plan of the Olmsted firm's plan. If you go back real quick and forward, you'll see they're very consistent. Nice photographs from the 30s of what that park looked like. And again, this is parallel to High Street, looking south towards Main Street. This is, in essence, in an area in close proximity to where the basketball courts are, looking northeast towards the Saugatucket and Main Street. This path is looking south towards High Street, and actually in the background, that gable building that you see does not exist anymore. That's the parking lot at a 45-degree angle to Peter DeMasi's building. Again, you see that building in the background, existing park, the overlay, and then again, these are close proximities to what's there. So again, the discussion is long-term viability. What's interesting here is this is an overlay that Randy Collins, who did a yeoman's job volunteering for the Economic Development Commission, preparing the analysis of existing versus Olmsted's design. And you see in the top left corner two black lines which show a path just below P and Saugatucket Park improvements. If you go to the P and Park and go directly down, where that connects to High Street, that's the existing path, and you'll see the overlay in light green. That was Olmsted's design. You also note the rectangle in the bottom left corner, which is the basketball court. If you look at Olmsted's original design, you'll notice to the top right of that rectangle, you'll see a lot of tight lines close to each other. Those were the original banks of the river. So if you built that basketball court when Olmsted originally designed this park, that basketball court would have been in the water. Subsequently, between the design and now, that area was filled, and that is where the basketball court is. So again, just a couple unique aspects, and there's a historic photograph of the banks of the Saugatucket. And that's the basketball there. What's interesting here in that photograph, you can actually see some evidence of the old pathway associated with Olmsted's original design. In that hardened area that grass is having difficulty establishing. So again, I think the discussion with town council is warranted. I think it'll be a good discussion about what role the Saugatucket River Park plays in the long-term development of the community, as well as its role in economic development associated with downtown.
Thanks, Jamie.
Maria's been heavily involved, so if I went through it relatively quickly. Rich Bourbonnais is probably more intimately involved than I have, including a site walk today regarding the park, and I'd welcome any additional input.
Thanks, Thanks, Jamie. The interesting thing about this is that not only is it a historic design, Olmsted Brothers, which is coming, I think this year is the 300th anniversary of the firm, but the park is largely intact, other than a few little changes along High Street and that one path that's been recently rediscovered. There has been a group of volunteers, and this came out of a collaboration between the Economic Development Commission and URI Landscape Architecture Design Studio some, 5 or 6 years ago, that came up with different ways of making the river cleaner, making it more accessible, and making a better connection between the park and Main Street, thus improving the access for the general public to both the businesses and the park. There are a lot of invasives along the banks. There's decomposed tree limbs. There's just a lot of potential for cleaning it up and also better managing the stormwater. If anyone has ever been to the site after a serious storm, the basketball/pickleball court is generally underwater. So there are a lot of possible options. Paul's been a little bit involved as well. And the most recent, I think one of the slides had a reference to SNEP. The town has gotten a SNEP grant, which helps to identify improvements to the area as a whole. At this point, it's not a financial grant, it's technical assistance, but hopefully it will put the town in a good position for future grant monies. And there's a lot of community support and interest. There was a meeting held at the Contemporary Theater about 3 or 4 months ago that was well attended by a wide range of interested parties. And it's just one of those projects that everybody can really get behind because it serves so many good purposes. So I think it will be a very interesting joint meeting. Rich, you might have a few things to add from your perspective. Must be tired from the walk.
I believe there's a lot that can happen there. So we'll just have to see how it goes through. But I don't know. It was a good meeting today. I think there are other options. I think there are parking lot on the other side of the water, perhaps. I do love those old images.
Yeah.
The pathway edging, and it looks more like a chipstone than it does, asphalt. I mean, there are actually other things that could be improved there, maybe over time. But I think getting the layout right is probably the starting point. Stone seal the path. And also, that path right there is a little wider. It's a little different. Grass right down to the water.
Right. And of course, invasives require very special management. You can't just mow them down. And one of the cool things that has come about because of this has been research done by Richard Youngkin has not only found these maps, but also found letters from the owners of the Bell Block in town. The great-grandfather was, at the time, had some position within the town government and actually wrote to the Olmsted brothers to encourage them to come and design this park. So very cool kind of historic reference.
I get to a lot of meetings. I was at the HPHC a couple of months ago, and I just informally mentioned to a couple of members that we were very excited about this Olmsted Park, and they went, they were everywhere. I was very disappointed.
But maybe not intact the way this one
I was
is.
going to say there are resemblances
Utilized.
of Olmsted throughout New England, but they're not always intact.
Yeah, I mean, there was talk today about the sledding hill that on the weekends in the winter is full of little kids flying down the hill. That's such an iconic image for South Kingstown. All right.
Can I ask a question about it? So for having a joint meeting, I think it's pretty obvious what the role would be of the Economic Commission and the Parks and Rec Commission, what interest they have in this. And I wonder what our role would be. Like if you have some ideas about, is it the landscaping portion? Is it the interaction with the people? Like what would our role be if, the economic guys and the rec guys, what's our role here?
Well, from a planning perspective, our role is through the comprehensive community plan is planning for the long-term future and viability of the community. So any improvements to infrastructure that the municipality has should be in concert with the goals and recommendations of the comprehensive community plan. And I think there are some strong tie-ins to proponents of this project as it relates to recommendations in that plan, because a few, and this is not reflective of the Saugatucket Park, but if someone has an idea, that idea isn't always consistent with the comprehensive community plan. And in some aspects it could be a great idea, and then the planning board will have to look at making potential revisions to the comprehensive community plan in order to move that forward. Or if the town is going to seek any funding, it's always good for the town in any grant application to recommend consistency and point out that consistency within the comprehensive community plan. When I did the grant application for the site readiness, it was very easy to go back to the comprehensive community plan and pull recommendations from that plan with regards to developing new standards, developing a permitting and regulatory process that is favorable for the community, both the residents who live here as well as the development community who may be in the application process. So I think there's an over-guiding oversight that the planning board has. If EDC has, is gung-ho about a project in some aspects, or any, not just economic development, is that project in line with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive community plan? This one, I think you can come to the conclusion that aspects of it are, and I think that's your role. And you're all residents here. You all live in this community. I think just the nature of the residents, and some of you are business owners within the area, and can provide substantial input to any project that's associated with Saugatucket. And again, the town has just under $9 million of American Rescue funds. Right now, a little over $6 million are targeted to improve the downtowns or villages in the community. Anything done on Main Street can only enhance the attractiveness of this park. Anything done at the park can potentially enhance the attractiveness of Down Street. So there's a lot of synergy when you talk about the community and enhancing the community as it relates to downtown and economic development. Strong schools, strong parks, strong main streets make strong towns. And they make places people want to live in.
We just had Burger King, and that's something that's going to be coming down, and we're asking, on sites like those, we're always asking for water quality, right? This is the same watershed, so we're dealing with significant problems in some of our water bodies. It's all TMDL, right? So, and this is really what this project's about. It's about addressing fecal coliform in the Saugatucket River, which is what promulgated the TMDL designation. It's the same thing. Every project we work in these areas, it's all the same. It's the same. And this is just jumping on board with that. That's just my thought.
The other thing is that it's an opportunity for the different commissions to actually work together instead of being segregated, so that's something welcome and necessary.
In most aspects, you're not wearing a regulatory hat as it relates to this. You know, if they're moving a path, there's no regulatory process associated with the planning board. But again, that tie-in to the comprehensive community plan is important. You know, if there was no discussion about enhancing recreational opportunities, developing synergy between parks and places and connectivity in your comprehensive community plan, and they were starting to talk about this, I would be writing notes to say, at some point we need to amend the comprehensive community plan to have that tie-in. Your foresight in the development of the comprehensive community plan already spearheads that discussion.
And you know, the Recreation Department has a recreation grant from DEM relating to redoing the pathways and the fence in the park. But obviously there's more that folks wish to do, including perhaps making a connection to the bike path adjacent to the school. There's lots of other great ideas out there, and I think having the community as a whole weigh in, having access to different grant opportunities from stormwater to recreation to education, anything of that nature is certainly a plus.
And again, with American Rescue and infrastructure money potentially becoming available, and the state could call up one day and say, do you have projects ready to go? And to Rich's point, if you had a water quality project that may be across the river from the park, if that can be undertaken, that still improves the quality of the river, which improves the quality of the park. So there, again, there's a lot of synergy in the projects in this area.
Anything else? Very good. Before we adjourn, Jamie, can you give us the date of the TRC?
TRC, the next TRC meeting is, help if we did January 12th.
I'll volunteer for that since I have not participated in one in a little while. Before we adjourn, just a couple of things relative to our January schedule. I know that staff sent out a schedule for 2022 for our work session dates and our regular meeting dates. I'm just a little bit concerned about having items shifted to January, wondering what January looks like, and just want to be sure, not that anyone has a crystal ball, but if it looks like we're going to have such a big meeting with multiple public hearings that we're going to be here until well past midnight, we would like to avoid that out of fairness to everyone concerned. So, Jamie, just a thought about as we get closer to that date, can you look at that? And would board members feel more comfortable if we added an additional meeting rather than try for the marathon and then decide at 11 o'clock, gee, we need to move these next 5 items to? Great.
We point taken.
All right, very good.
And again, staff is sitting here with you
Yes,
until the
yes.
wee hours of the morning. Yeah. So again, pushing 3 items tonight to January.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there's an opportunity that things that were potentially in the queue for January won't be ready, so they'll go to February. So, you know, we've seen this trickle effect. We've had conversations with your chairperson for the last couple of months that the next meeting's going to be really long because there's a lot of agenda items, and that with this trickle and delay effect by some of the applications, we haven't seen that marathon meeting. But at some point, it's going to catch up to us. So we even looking at Matunic Beach coming forward in January or February, we may work with the chairperson to potentially have Matunic on a separate night. Versus discussing, starting a public hearing at 9:30 and going to 10:30, and then still having business to conduct.
First one, right?
Yes. Yep.
Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn? Motion from Peter, second from Paul. All those in favor? Aye. Very good. Thanks, everyone. Happy holidays.